Thank you very much. And next speaker on the list is Mr. Albert Gyan, Senior Representative NGO Committee on Financing for Development. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We would like to use this opportunity to recommend your office and the FFD office for ensuring that this process remains interactive and certainly involves all stakeholders. I'd like to just make a brief observation and then request for the further indulgence of Mr. Clark in exposing some of the recommendations he made here. I'm with the NGO Committee and also represent the African Development Inter-Exchange Network. Our goal, to some extent, is to assist in articulating the ethical and moral imperatives of financing for development within a framework of a just and fair system. Furthermore, we also feel we have that responsibility of sounding the alarm bell when the sense of urgency is lost. From all indications, the sense of urgency that sought the international community to immediately address the crisis right after 2008-09 is dissipating. And it is not accidental. I mean, from the perspective of those on the ground, and as many of you here in New York may have witnessed, those in Occupy Wall Street see it as the moment a solution was found to bail out the banks and the big financial institutions, the impression was created that the crisis has been contained. The reality on the ground is that still quite a number of, lack of a better word, 99% are still really grappling with the crisis in ways that are hardly imaginable. And it's often unfortunate that there's this perception. I'm forced to draw an analogy with the crisis of addressing the HIV pandemic. Immediately after the recognition of the threat that the pandemic posed for the international community, resources were mobilized, the General Assembly and the Security Council were called, and strong efforts, strained-out efforts were made to address it immediately. But the moment a somewhat solution was found for those who had the means, the pandemic was seen to have been contained. And it's taking years of endless and useless deaths, I mean, for somewhat acceptable way of dealing with the process. So, insofar as we are seeking solutions, I think it's important that we also recognize what I'm referring to as putting out the fires. We need measures that address our sense of urgency to put out the fires. Unfortunately, the major source of funding for such immediate action has been ODA. And as my colleague has rightly pointed out, it's almost a slap in the face to refer to that as a means of building any form of a social compact. It is, I think if we don't find ways of at least meeting those goals, the credibility of the institution still weighs in the balance. And I think it's important that we find some ways of drawing those who are more or less failing to meet those deadlines to do so. And I will support the statement made by the G77 in China to urge for those targets to be met. This morning the reference was made to the fact that we may probably need a new social compact. Whenever those sessions are made, our immediate attention is drawn to the fact, why did this old compact fail? How can't we figure out ways of fixing that before we try to put in place a new solution? And this brings me to the quite challenging presentation by Mr. Clark. And Mr. Clark, we've been following the work that UNCTAD has been doing, and we certainly are hoping to be constantly in touch with what roles we can play in advancing some of the very laudable packages that you presented. But the very attractive concept of a partnership approach with a win-win-win is evidently one that any reasonable person will negate as a non-solution. You had a caveat in your presentation that said it is feasible but challenging, and I would probably indulge you to provide us some insight into the fundamental challenges that you envisage, and possibly indicate ways that we, the members of civil society, and for that matter all the other stakeholders, could play a role in helping you overcome those challenges, or for that matter the community overcome those challenges. There's often what I have been referring to as the false dichotomy of legitimacy and competence, and there's accusation has been made that the UN doesn't have that competence. I mean, I so of course go to dispute that. Probably what is really somewhat lacking in the work that the UNCTAD has been doing is taking it to the next level. You know, because evidently the analyses are brilliant, proposals are brilliant, but figuring out a framework where the parties could come together and work constructively to advance the cause has been our biggest hurdle. So I will be very glad if Mr. Clark could sort of fill us in on how we as members of the civil society could play a role in at least helping you overcome some of those challenges. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, and we have heard the last speaker on my list.